Hey history buffs! Today let's dive into one of the most dramatic episodes of colonial history, the Great Land Heist, also known as the British colonization of Australia. Buckle up, because this story's got everything: adventure, tragedy, and a clash of civilizations. So, picture this. It's 1788. The British First Fleet arrives on the shores of what we now know as New South Wales. Captain Arthur Phillip steps off the ship, looks around, and declares the land terra nullius, meaning nobody's land. Only problem? It wasn't nobody's land. Indigenous Australians had been living there for over 65,000 years. Let's rewind a bit. Before the British claimed Australia, the land was home to hundreds of diverse Aboriginal tribes, each with its own language and culture. They had a deep spiritual connection with the land, seeing it as a living entity. But the British, driven by a thirst for expansion and resources, saw it as an uncharted territory ripe for the taking. Thus began a tragic tale of dispossession and resistance. The British government, eager to alleviate overcrowded prisons, decided to use Australia as a penal colony. So they shipped over convicts, soldiers, and settlers. At first, survival was tough. The new arrivals struggled with the harsh climate and unfamiliar land. But soon, they started to establish settlements, claiming more and more Aboriginal land. The impact on Indigenous Australians was catastrophic. Many were driven off their ancestral lands, leading to violent conflicts. Diseases like smallpox brought by the Europeans decimated the population. Traditional ways of life were disrupted, and many sacred sites were desecrated. But let's not forget the Indigenous resistance. Brave leaders like Pemulwuy and Yagan fought fiercely to defend their land and people. Pemulwuy, for instance, led a guerrilla campaign against the British for over a decade. Despite their valiant efforts, the technological advantage of the British proved too overwhelming. Fast forward to the 19th century. Britain's grip on Australia tightened, and the colonists spread further inland. By now, the Aboriginal population had drastically declined. Government policies aimed at assimilating Indigenous Australians into European culture further eroded their traditional ways of life. It wasn't until the late 20th century that the Australian government began to acknowledge the injustices done to the Indigenous peoples. The 1967 referendum and the historic Mabo decision of 1992 were significant steps towards recognizing Aboriginal land rights. However, the journey towards reconciliation continues today. So, what's the takeaway? The colonization of Australia is a stark reminder of the devastating impacts of imperialism and the resilience of Indigenous cultures. It's a story of survival, resistance, and a fight for justice that still resonates. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this video enlightening, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more untold stories from history. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and most importantly, keep the past alive. Welcome back to Wisdom World, where we dive deep into history's most captivating stories. Today, we're exploring a fascinating yet turbulent chapter of American history, the clash between native tribes and railroad tycoons. This clash not only shaped the lives of countless Indigenous people but also paved the way for the modern American landscape. So buckle up as we journey through this compelling tale of ambition, resistance, and the fight for sovereignty. The mid-19th century was a transformative time in America. The completion of the first transcontinental railroad in 1869 revolutionized transportation and commerce. Railroads promised progress, connecting the East Coast with the West. But behind this progress lay a darker reality: the displacement of native tribes from their ancestral lands. As railroads expanded, they crossed through vast territories inhabited by Indigenous peoples, threatening their way of life and sovereignty. Tribes like the Sioux, Cheyenne, and others found themselves at the crossroads of progress and preservation. The railroads weren't just iron tracks, they were symbols of encroachment and loss. In response to this invasion, native tribes mobilized to protect their lands. They employed various strategies, from negotiation and legal action to armed resistance. Leaders like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse emerged as pivotal figures in the fight against railroad expansion. The clash at Little Bighorn in 1876 wasn't just a battle, it was a fierce stand against the forces threatening their existence. This resistance was fueled by a desire to preserve their culture and autonomy, a testament to their resilience against overwhelming odds. On the other side were the railroad tycoons, driven by ambition and profit. Figures like Cornelius Vanderbilt and Leland Stanford sought to expand their empires at any cost. They viewed indigenous lands as mere obstacles in their pursuit of wealth. The government, often in collusion with these magnates, enacted policies that disregarded treaties and the rights of native peoples. Land was seized and resources exploited, leading to a devastating impact on the tribe's way of life. This was more than a business venture, it was a clash of values where profit was prioritized over humanity. The consequences of these historical events echo through time. Today, many native tribes continue to fight for their rights, land, and recognition. The legacy of railroad expansion is a reminder of the struggle for indigenous sovereignty and the importance of honoring treaties. As we reflect on this history, it's crucial to understand the narratives of those who lived through these events. By listening to native voices today, we can foster a more inclusive understanding of our past. So, what can we learn from this clash between railroad tycoons and native tribes? It's a story of resilience, the fight for justice, and the ongoing journey towards reconciliation. I want to hear your thoughts. How do you think the history of railroad expansion impacts native communities today? Share your insights in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more content like this, and hit the bell icon to stay updated. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Welcome back to Wisdom World. Today we're diving deep into a crucial yet often misunderstood chapter of history, colonial propaganda. Specifically, we'll decode how European powers justified their rule in Africa. Stick around as we explore the narratives crafted to legitimize colonization and the impact they had on millions. Let's get started. To understand colonial propaganda, we first need to set the stage. The late 19th and early 20th centuries were marked by the scramble for Africa, where European powers raced to claim territories. But how did they convince their citizens and the world that this was justified? Enter propaganda. It was more than just a tool. It was a narrative that framed colonization as a noble mission. But in reality, it masked exploitation and violence. Colonial propaganda revolved around several key themes: the idea of the civilizing mission, the portrayal of African societies as primitive, and the notion of European superiority. First, the civilizing mission. Colonizers claimed they were bringing civilization, Christianity, and education to Africa. This narrative painted them as benevolent guardians, ignoring the fact that they were often dismantling existing societies. Secondly, the portrayal of Africans as uncivilized and in need of guidance served to justify the subjugation of entire populations. Images depicting Africans as savages or noble savages were rampant in literature and art. But what was the actual impact of this propaganda? It not only justified brutal exploitation but also stifled resistance. Many Europeans genuinely believed they were helping, making it harder for them to see the suffering their actions caused. However, African communities were not passive victims. They resisted, adapted, and created their own narratives to counteract colonial propaganda. Leaders emerged and movements formed to reclaim their identities and rights. The legacy of colonial propaganda is still felt today. It shaped perceptions and power dynamics that linger in global relations. Understanding this history is essential for addressing ongoing inequalities. But it's not just about the past. Many African nations are redefining their identities, reclaiming their narratives, and celebrating their cultures in powerful ways. In conclusion, Decoding Colonial Propaganda reveals how narratives can shape realities. It's a reminder that history is complex, and understanding it is key to building a better future. Thanks for watching. If you found value in today's discussion, give us a thumbs up, subscribe for more insights, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about the legacy of colonial propaganda? Let's talk about it.